And Indiana has done it. Their first ever Commissioner's Cup championship.
The basketball world thought they had it all figured out. The narrative was set, the script already written. Indiana Fever were finished, with their biggest star, Caitlin Clark, benched by injury and their roster falling apart. Nobody gave them a chance. Not the analysts, not the fans, not even the oddsmakers. The Minnesota Lynx were the reigning champions, the heavy favorites, and they were playing on their home court with an MVP frontrunner leading the charge. This was supposed to be a blowout, a coronation, a reminder of who runs the W. But what happened instead wasn't just an upset, it was a seismic shock that rattled the entire league. A game that flipped every prediction on its head, left critics speechless, and forced even ESPN to rewrite their headlines midstream. And the best part? It wasn't just about winning. It was about proving a point that this team had grit, heart, and enough firepower to burn through every doubt cast their way. And just when you thought the story couldn't get any crazier, Caitlin Clark, still in street clothes, delivered 6 words that set the internet ablaze. But before we get to that viral moment, we need to talk about the storm the Fever walked through just to make it to tip-off, because the odds weren't just against them, they were drowning in setbacks.
She feels good. We want to make sure that she's confident. We want to make sure that we're not putting her in a position to
Howard to steal. Open floor in front of her. Got the lay. Indiana battling.
This crowd is quiet.
And they are flowing, man. They are making music, and there's no doubt about it. So we have to try to be disruptive, and we have to try to take them out of that risk.
The Indiana Fever didn't just show up to the Commissioner's Cup final wounded. They were barely holding it together. Their sophomore phenom, Caitlin Clark, the player responsible for lighting up arenas and lifting the franchise into the national spotlight, was benched for the 3rd straight game. A nagging groin injury had robbed the team of their spark plug, and the timing couldn't have been worse. This was the biggest game of the season, and their floor general, their shot creator, their assist leader, their heartbeat, was on the sidelines, trying to stay positive while battling frustration. It wasn't just the physical absence of Clark that hurt, it was the ripple effect it had on the entire roster. The team's offensive rhythm, once fast-paced and electric, had slowed to a crawl in her absence. Without her vision, her communication, her presence, players were out of sync. What once looked like organized chaos on the court now just looked chaotic. And every reporter was asking the same question. Could she be ready in time? The coaching staff played it safe, keeping long-term recovery in mind. But for fans, seeing Clark sidelined was already a gut punch.
Gets that deflection, gets going in the open court, and it is all Indiana in terms of the momentum.
This wasn't just about her stats. It was about her leadership, but that wasn't the only blow Indiana took before the final. They were missing more than just a star. A perfect storm of roster gaps, unexpected exits, and disappearing veterans was brewing behind the scenes. And what happened next only made things worse. As if losing their superstar wasn't enough, the Fever were hit with a betrayal that cut even deeper. Veteran forward DeWanna Bonner, brought in during the offseason to add experience, toughness, and leadership, walked away from the team. Just 9 games into the season, Bonner was benched due to poor performance, and instead of pushing through adversity like the leader she was supposed to be, she tapped out, requested to be released, and was waived. For a young team like Indiana, that kind of departure doesn't just hurt on the court, it shakes the foundation of the locker room. Bonner wasn't some role player. She was supposed to be the example, the voice in the huddle, the mentor to a group of rising stars. Instead, what she left behind was confusion, disappointment, and a very public message. When the spotlight dims, walk away. And yet, while Bonner collected a max contract paycheck for sitting out, the rest of the team had no choice but to keep fighting. They were forced to fill the leadership void on the fly, figure out new rotations, and hold each other together in a pressure cooker that was rapidly reaching its boiling point. And looming ahead of them, the most dominant team in the WNBA, ready to expose every weakness. Standing between the Indiana Fever and their first ever Commissioner's Cup title was a juggernaut, the Minnesota Lynx. Not just any contender, but the team, the defending Commissioner's Cup champions, the best record in the league, a squad firing on all cylinders, led by MVP frontrunner Napheesa Collier, who had been torching defenses all season. They were playing on their home court in front of a sold-out, roaring crowd that came expecting a coronation, not a contest. The odds? Brutal. Las Vegas had Minnesota favored by 14 points. Analysts called it a mismatch. Commentators predicted a blowout. To most, this wasn't a championship game. It was a formality. Indiana, without Clark and missing key rotation players, was seen as little more than a sacrificial lamb. And watching the Lynx play, it was easy to see why. Their offense moved with grace and precision, a symphony of cuts, passes, and timing. Their defense was suffocating. They didn't just win games, they dismantled opponents. Their chemistry looked unbreakable, their rhythm impossible to disrupt. Every scout, every camera, every social media post pointed to the same outcome. Minnesota would dominate, and Indiana would crumble. The Fever weren't just underdogs, they were walking into a lion's den wearing a target on their back. But while everyone expected them to fold, something unexpected was bubbling beneath the surface, a spark, a refusal to go quietly, because no one seemed to notice. This Indiana team had nothing left to lose. Without Caitlin Clark orchestrating the offense, the Indiana Fever started to unravel, and fast. The team that had once been a blur of motion, crisp passes, and explosive tempo now looked stuck in quicksand. The offense became sluggish, predictable, ball movement all but disappeared, replaced by isolation plays and forced shots. Guards ignored open teammates. Players tried to do everything themselves. Wasn't selfishness, it was desperation. Aaliyah Boston, the team's powerhouse in the paint, was left stranded. Time after time, she'd fight for a position, call for the ball, and watch as it never came. Instead of feeding their best interior scorer, the guards settled for contested jumpers and broken possessions. You could see it in Boston's eyes: frustration, confusion, disbelief. She wasn't just missing touches, she was being left out of the game plan entirely. The Fever weren't just struggling, they were falling apart. 3 losses in 5 games told the story. Leads were squandered, confidence evaporated. Without Clark's vision and poise, the team lacked a compass. No one was directing traffic, setting tempo, or calming the storm. They weren't playing together anymore. They were just trying to survive. And with the Commissioner's Cup final looming, critics smelled blood in the water. This was supposed to be Indiana's moment to shine. Instead, it looked like they were headed straight for disaster. But just when the pressure reached a boiling point, everything shifted. With the odds stacked sky high and the spotlight burning hotter than ever, the Indiana Fever faced a choice: fold under the weight of expectation, or fight like their season depended on it. And it did. What happened in that Commissioner's Cup final wasn't just about a trophy, it was a defining moment, a test of identity. A gut-check game that would reveal who they really were without Caitlin Clark leading the charge. Head coach Stephanie White knew it too. She didn't sugarcoat the stakes. Her message was clear: pressure is a privilege. In other words, champions aren't made when it's easy. They're made when everything feels like it's falling apart. So she challenged her team to rise, to lean into the discomfort, and to prove that the belief wasn't just hype. It was real. What followed wasn't a miracle. It was grit, it was discipline, it was players taking accountability, communicating, and deciding to trust each other again. Every possession became a battle. Every pass, every rebound, every cut was made with purpose. You could feel it. Something had changed. They weren't playing like underdogs anymore. They were playing like they belonged, and leading the charge, a player who had waited her entire career for a moment like this: Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell didn't wait for permission. She took control from the very first possession, attacking the Lynx defense with a confidence that sent a clear message. This wasn't going to be a blowout, it was going to be a battle. With Caitlin Clark out, Mitchell stepped into the void and made it her stage. Her drives to the basket were fearless, slicing through defenders with speed and precision. And when the defense backed off, she punished them from deep. Shooting an electrifying 41% from beyond the arc, Mitchell became a nightmare matchup. Her release was quick, her decision-making sharp. But what made her performance special wasn't just the scoring, it was the composure. She didn't force shots. She didn't play hero ball. She played smart, controlled, high-level basketball that shifted the game's momentum. Her leadership extended beyond the box score. She set the tone emotionally, keeping her teammates locked in and energized. Her energy was contagious. The crowd started to sense something was brewing. Commentators who had dismissed Indiana suddenly changed their tone. Mitchell was cooking, and Minnesota couldn't find an answer. But she wasn't alone in the fight. because just as Mitchell lit the fuse, Aaliyah Boston and Natasha Howard were about to bring the explosion. With the floor spaced by Mitchell's hot shooting, Aaliyah Boston finally got the touches she'd been craving, and she made every one of them count. From the moment she got the ball in her sweet spots, it was clear the Lynx had a problem. Boston powered her way to a double-double, finishing with 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. She wasn't just scoring, she was controlling the paint, anchoring the defense, and making smart, unselfish plays that kept Indiana's offense humming. But it was Natasha Howard who became the engine that refused to stop. Her energy was relentless. She attacked from every angle, posting up, slashing, cutting, crashing the boards. She delivered 16 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and not a single moment of hesitation. She showed up like a veteran on a mission, stepping into the spotlight and seizing it with both hands. Defensively, Howard was everywhere. She was a one-woman wall, locking down Nafisa Collier, the league's MVP favorite, and forcing her into tough, contested shots. Howard's hands were active, her footwork crisp. She stripped the ball, jumped passing lanes, and led the fast break like a guard. And when it came to clutch moments, she knocked down all 8 of her free throws with ice in her veins. By the time the third quarter ended, the momentum had fully shifted. The Fever weren't just surviving anymore, they were controlling the game. And just when Minnesota thought they might claw their way back, Indiana unleashed even more firepower off the bench. Just when the Lynx thought they had their hands full with Mitchell, Boston, and Howard, Sophie Cunningham checked in and lit a fire under the entire team. She didn't ease into the game, she came in guns blazing, draining 3 huge three-pointers, grabbing 7 rebounds, and swinging the momentum fully in Indiana's favor. Cunningham's spark off the bench was exactly what the Fever needed to break Minnesota's rhythm. Her confidence was infectious. Every time she pulled up from deep, you could feel the bench rise before the ball even hit the net. But the Fever weren't done. Aari McDonald, a new signing that hadn't even settled into the rotation, played like she'd been waiting for this opportunity her whole career. She dropped 12 points with fearless drives and heads-up plays that caught the Lynx off guard. Her energy was electric, relentless on defense, quick in transition, and clutch in big moments. McDonald brought fresh legs and fearless execution at exactly the right time. Then came Lexi Hull, a quiet contributor. Most games, she picked the perfect night to shine. Whether it was hitting a timely 3 or digging in defensively, she made her minutes count. Indiana's bench wasn't just filling gaps, they were flipping the game on its head. What was supposed to be a Lynx-dominated showcase had turned into a team-wide eruption from Indiana. 5 players scored in double figures. The Fever looked deeper, hungrier, and more connected than ever, and the next few minutes would decide everything. With the crowd roaring and Minnesota desperate to swing the momentum, Indiana didn't flinch. The Lynx cut the lead down to single digits early in the fourth quarter, forcing a Fever timeout. For a moment, it felt like the defending champs were about to make their move, but instead of collapsing, Indiana came out of that huddle with ice in their veins and slammed the door shut. Aaliyah Boston hit a clean hook shot in the paint. McDonald followed it up with a lightning-fast drive to the rim. Then came another dagger from Cunningham in the corner. Just like that, any hope Minnesota had vanished. The Fever responded with poise, precision, and a killer instinct they hadn't shown all season. This wasn't a young team stumbling into a lead. This was a battle-hardened unit taking what was theirs. Defensively, Indiana went into lockdown mode. They held the Lynx to just 39 points across the final 3 quarters, an unreal stat against a team loaded with scorers. Minnesota's shooting percentage plummeted to 34.9% by the end of the night. Every possession was contested, every pass was pressured, and every time the Lynx tried to shift momentum, Indiana met them with a wall. It wasn't just physical, it was mental domination. The Fever didn't give them a single inch of breathing room, and in doing so, they delivered the final blow. The scoreboard read 74-59, but it wasn't just a win, it was a message. And just when the world thought the drama was over, Caitlin Clark, still in street clothes, delivered the mic drop heard around the league. The game was over, the trophy secured, but the Fever weren't done making headlines. As cameras followed the team into the locker room, the energy was electric. Players laughing, dancing, celebrating a win no one outside that room believed they could pull off. And then, in the middle of the chaos, Caitlin Clark, still sidelined, still in street clothes, grabbed everyone's attention with just 6 words. Everybody in the league is sick. It wasn't a taunt. It was a truth, a raw, unfiltered observation that cut straight to the core of the WNBA's simmering tension. All season long, Clark had been at the center of controversy, fouls, media storms, jealousy from veterans, and endless debates about her spotlight. But now, she had nothing left to prove. Her team had just won it all, without her on the court. And those 6 words were her way of saying it loud. The league didn't want this, but they were going to have to deal with it. The moment went viral instantly. Clips of Clark hoisting the Commissioner's Cup like a chalice, joking with teammates, calling out rookie Michaela Timpson to join the party. These weren't just celebrations. They were statements. Clark wasn't sulking or hiding in the background. She was front and center, fully engaged, leading from the sideline. Her words were more than locker room banter. They echoed what fans had felt all season, that the backlash, the fouls, the media silence around her injuries. It wasn't about basketball, it was about fear. And now, after Indiana's biggest win of the year, that fear had a face, and it was smiling through the pain. The Indiana Fever didn't just win a basketball game, they rewrote the script for the entire season. They walked into enemy territory without their superstar, missing key players, and carrying the weight of every doubt the media could throw at them. And still, they rose. They outplayed, out-hustled, and outsmarted the most dominant team in the league. This was more than a victory. It was a statement, loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. Kelsey Mitchell showed she's not just a supporting piece. She's a leader. Aaliyah Boston reminded everyone why she's a franchise cornerstone. Natasha Howard became the heartbeat of the game with an MVP performance. Sophie Cunningham, Ari McDonald, Lexi Hall, every single player stepped up and played their role to perfection. It wasn't about one star, it was about a team that believed in each other when no one else did. And through it all, Caitlin Clark proved something even bigger, that she doesn't have to be on the court to lead. Her presence, her fire, and those now iconic 6 words captured the spirit of a team that isn't just surviving the spotlight, they're owning it. This win changes how the Fever are viewed across the WNBA. It proves their depth, their heart, and most of all, their future. Because now, they know they can win without Clark, which makes them even more terrifying when she returns. So if you've got the Fever, drop it in the comments below. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Because something special is building in Indiana, and the league better be ready.